What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 5 do not draft running backs for the 2023 fantasy football season. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? What other names would you put on this list and why? Along with any other questions you guys might have, we will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. And as you can see, we have got our 2023 fantasy football rankings pulled up here via Fantasy Pros. A quick note, this is PPR based, but that shouldn't matter too much. Again, these are guys that we are avoiding for a multitude of reasons. So the format scoring wise doesn't really play into it all that much. But with that being said, without further ado, let's kick things off with the number 1 name on our list. Highest guy in terms of rankings, that is Breece Hall, who comes in at number 11 here of the New York Jets. And this one has everything to do with the injury and nothing to do with the talent, because we do believe in the talent of Breece Hall. We saw it last year. And if it wasn't for the injury, the guy would be, arguably a first-round selection, especially with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. But the ACL, it's a tricky injury. Now, to be fair, it wasn't as brutal of an ACL injury as it could have been, like one of our later names on this list, maybe spoiler alert potentially, but we'll get to that in a little bit. With Breece Hall, it seemed to be, ACL, no other potential structural damage. But even when you look at the list of running backs that have come back post ACL injuries, and it's not like Breece Hall had his ACL injury like immediately week 1 of the NFL season. So it was later on. A couple weeks had passed, things like that. So in terms of rehab time, it's not like he's had a super long time to rehab this thing. But as I was mentioning before, the list of running backs that have come back from ACLs the following year and have put up great fantasy production, folks, historically speaking, it's a short list. And we're talking like top 10 fantasy production. You've got Adrian Peterson, who's a freak of nature. You've got guys like maybe a Dalvin Cook, a Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, but those guys finishing outside the top 10 running backs, inconsistencies galore, and I think that's what we might be seeing here with Breece Hall, honestly. On top of that, the fact that the New York Jets have been rumored to be landing spots of a lot of these veteran running backs, a la Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt. You get the point. It tells you that, they know something that we potentially don't, or that they want to take it easy with Breece Hall in this immediate aftermath post his injury of 2023. That, okay, maybe they're still going to utilize him, but the volume isn't going to be there. And they're just taking a long-term approach with him when it comes to him as a player and, their team. They think their window is open for a little bit longer, especially with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. So short-term wise, 2023, I am worried about Breece Hall. Now, long-term, that's a completely different story. I'm willing to have him ranked a lot higher next year. But as far as 2023 is concerned, again, especially with the ADP, I mean, look at this. He's ranked as a top 12 running back. That's got me worried. You're going to have to pay decent draft capital. And with an ACL injury, I would rather look elsewhere. I would look for, a top-notch wide receiver, something like that, just as an example. But let's continue to move on here. And we're going to talk a guy in J.K. Dobbins, who comes in at number 19 of the Baltimore Ravens. Somebody that is a name I feel like you're either all in on or just out on. And Dobbins has been a guy, been in the league a short while, but talk about somebody that suffered a major ACL injury with other structural damage. I mean, there's a reason why he skipped a year completely from playing. Then last year, skipped several games as well. I just think that with J.K. Dobbins, at some point you go, okay, well, a running back is never quite going to be the same after an extremely serious injury like the one that he suffered. Now, I'm sure there's going to be several games where he pops off, right? He has 2, 3 touchdowns, something like that. But if you look at last year, I wasn't fully impressed by the rushing attempts. I wasn't fully impressed by the rushing yards, things like that. And people will point out, okay, well, Lamar Jackson wasn't playing, so this offense wasn't clicking to its full potential. Well, okay, the other side of that is, yeah, Lamar Jackson wasn't playing, aka the top unquestioned rusher on this team, the guy that is going to probably lead the Baltimore Ravens in rushing yards, probably be a vulture for rushing touchdowns in the red zone. So to me, that's a serious situation here that we also have to factor. And for all those people that are saying, okay, well, the Baltimore Ravens all of a sudden are going to start throwing the football a lot more. They added all these weapons. I just don't think that Lamar Jackson is all of a sudden going to stop doing what has made him such a huge weapon. And on top of that, to me, that further solidifies the fact that, okay, well, for a fact, pretty much, J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be catching any passes or a minimal amount. Like we're talking between 20 to 25 catches on the year, something like that, because, you've added Odell Beckham. You've got Rashad Bateman coming back healthy, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews. So I just don't see the targets there for J.K. Dobbins. But to be fair, he's never been a PPR guy. So I will admit that. So essentially what you're getting here is, looking at the full picture, you're getting somebody that, again, to be fair, almost 2 years ago now, is somebody with major injury history, and it included structural damage. So does that fully ever get back to where it was previously? Tough to say. And he's on a team that also has Gus Edwards. Like, they run a little bit running back by committee type of approach. They've got a run first quarterback, and you're spending top 20 draft capital on him. That's got me a little bit worried. I would rather just pass on J.K. Dobbins. There's other guys here in this range that I would much rather go with. Guys like a Miles Sanders. Guys like, potentially a James Conner, potentially a Rachaad White. I think that their ceiling is a little bit higher. Same with maybe an Alexander Mattison if the Vikings don't add anybody to that offense. But let's move on to the third name on our list, running back-wise here. We're going DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles. And a lot of people were celebrating once Swift got traded from the Lions to the Eagles, and I understand it. It was a very, very crowded backfield in Detroit. So Swift leaving, it's a good thing, right? But you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, they signed Rashad Penny. They've still got guys like Kenneth Gainwell. They've had a slew of running backs in that running back room that can all get it done. DeAndre Swift, he's got an injury history. And something that's made him super valuable in years prior has been his pass catching ability. Well, with Jalen Hurts, he's another one of these higher echelon rushing quarterbacks. Now, I know he took a major step forward last year as a passer, right? I will admit that. But he's still going to be vulturing opportunities similar to a Lamar Jackson in terms of rushing yards, in terms of red zone touchdowns. And on top of that, I just don't think that DeAndre Swift is that prototypical, goal line back, if you will. I think that's going to be more of the Rashad Penny role. And if you're saying, okay, DeAndre Swift is going to be this PPR stud, I mean, is he though? Like, you look at this team, they've got a lot of pass catchers that I think are going to be more heavily targeted than a DeAndre Swift. You've got Devonta Smith, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Dallas Goedert. So I think those guys are ahead of the pecking order when it comes to DeAndre Swift, somebody that's just joining the team. So to me, from that perspective, it's tough to trust DeAndre Swift as a starting running back. Some people are going to use, that as the reason. Well, he's the starting running back on this roster. He's going to get all the opportunities. And while I do agree that he's probably the best running back on this team, I don't think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to fully unleash him and, feature him here. So for that reason, I'm going to pass on DeAndre Swift. I feel like he's been somebody that's kind of been creeping up in rankings lately. But to me, I would rather just pass on him altogether. I think the top-notch, upper echelon days of what DeAndre Swift could be, from years prior in Detroit are pretty much gone. Now let's move on to a name that I kind of alluded to before. Javonte Williams comes in at number 29 here for the Denver Broncos. And if you're looking for a comp here, I think you can use J.K. Dobbins kind of the first year after his injury. Uh, Even though the Denver Broncos are saying Javonte Williams is somehow going to play, at the start of the year, I find that incredibly hard to believe. And honestly, I don't really put too much weight into what the coaches are saying or what Javonte Williams is saying. Other guys have said that before about their injuries. You think about a Cam Akers, you think about a J.K. Dobbins, whatever, and they haven't looked all that great in their respective returns from injury. And Javonte Williams is somebody that, again, he suffered an ACL in addition to several other injuries there. So I'm worried. I don't think that we're going to really see Javonte Williams do much of anything early on in the season. Like, anytime I've done mock drafts and I've drafted Javonte Williams, he has been purely a luxury pick. Somebody that's there in the late rounds, somebody that I am in no way, shape, or form relying on as a starting running back on my roster. Again, on my starting roster, because I think that would be way too rich for my blood, way too risky. I think Samaje Perine honestly outscores Javonte Williams this season for the Broncos. He's a good pass-catching running back. He's proven it before that he can get the job done in Cincinnati when Joe Mixon was unavailable. I think this is just way too big of an injury hurdle to overcome in such a short period of time for Javonte Williams. Like, you look at Breece Hall and the names that he has to beat out historically with his injury. For Javonte Williams, it's to another level on top of that. So, okay, maybe one of these guys surprises us here coming off their injuries. I don't think it's going to be Javonte Williams, though, is what I'm saying, right? Let's move on now, though, to our last name, number 30, Dalvin Cook, who is technically still a free agent, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, though, did get released. And with Dalvin Cook, there's a lot of things I look at here. I look at age. I look at the fact that he does have an injury history as well. And last year, I thought that there was a decline there. I really did. Post week 9, the guy didn't have a single game over 100 rushing yards. I thought he was way too big play dependent. And I've said this over and over with Dalvin Cook. There is not going to be a team that he joins that is a better fit, better situation, real world and fantasy wise than what the Minnesota Vikings were. There just will not be. Unless there's just a catastrophic injury to a big time starting running back, Dalvin Cook, wherever he ends up, he is going to be in a running back by committee almost guaranteed. Because you think about the names, the teams that he's been linked with. He's been linked with teams like the Miami Dolphins, who have got 3-4 different running backs on that team already. That's not going to be the ideal landing spot for him fantasy-wise. He's been linked to teams like, for example, the New York Jets, which, again, potential running back by committee with Breece Hall if he's playing the full season. He's been linked to teams like maybe the Dallas Cowboys, but Tony Pollard's the main guy there now. So again, the top destinations, wherever Dalvin Cook goes, he will not be the guy. His best days are behind him, and I think what I'm worried about here is he's still a free agent. So he's looking basically to get the most money wherever he goes. Basically what DeAndre Hopkins did. All that talk about finding the best fit on a great offense where he can be the guy, that's all BS. Because DeAndre Hopkins ended up with the Tennessee Titans, who were willing to pay the most. I bet you Dalvin Cook is going to do the same. And that's not going to be ideal for fantasy purposes either. So for that reason, I am fully out on Dalvin Cook this year. And hopefully whenever the time comes that he does sign with a team, his ADP won't just skyrocket, because I think that could be an absolute trap. So definitely keep an eye out for that as well. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of the top 5 running backs you should not draft this 2023 fantasy football season. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other names you'd put on this list, and why? Along with any other questions you guys might have, we'll do our best to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.